a team that won the first two ODI World Cups, dominated the 1900s, and won all the ICC trophies. The team known as the Invincible West Indies, a team that other teams used to fear at one time, with a mindset of "I am the man," has fallen so low today that players have left international cricket to focus on T20 leagues like the IPL, and the national team's reputation has been completely tarnished, so much so that in recent years, the West Indies have failed to even qualify for ICC tournaments. On the other hand, their players are helping their teams win trophies in leagues around the world. There was a time when players and the cricket board were forced to fight among themselves. So, is the reason for the downfall of the West Indies team the huge amount of money in the IPL and other leagues, or is the West Indies Cricket Board itself responsible? Cricket in the West Indies, like in other cricket-playing nations, came from British colonization. Soon, the locals of the Caribbean islands adopted cricket well, and by 1950, cricket had become very popular in the West Indies. Fast forward to the 1975 World Cup. A young West Indies team that entered the tournament as a favorite won the World Cup in England without any problem. The West Indies didn't lose a single match in that World Cup and easily won the first ever World Cup. This trend continued in the next World Cup in 1979. The West Indies remained unbeaten in the group stage and won the World Cup again, as if other teams had come just to participate. The West Indies players made their names in both batting and bowling, and the players of that time were considered legends, like Sir Clive Lloyd and Sir Vivian Richards. It became almost impossible for any team to defeat the West Indies cricket team at that time. Then comes the 1983 World Cup, and this World Cup completely shocked the West Indies team. The West Indies lost their first match in the 1983 World Cup. Yes, you heard it right. The team that hadn't lost a single match in the last two World Cups lost their first match against India. Until that point, India was considered a weak team because, before that win, India had only won one match, which was against East Africa in the 1975 World Cup. This loss shook the entire world, but the West Indies team considered it just a fluke, and in their second match against India, Sir Vivian Richards broke India's back. Sir Viv Richards came to bat and, with his amazing 119 runs, India lost the match by 66 runs. The group stages ended, and the West Indies easily made it to the semi-finals by winning their remaining group matches. The West Indies semi-final match was against Pakistan, which the West Indies easily won. Sir Viv Richards was named man of the match, and the West Indies reached the finals to face India. And we all Indians remember what happened on that historic day of June 25, 1983. India beat all odds to win their first ever World Cup in cricket history, defeating the mighty West Indies team. And that was the beginning of the West Indies' downfall in World Cups. But losing one World Cup was not enough to bring the West Indies down. Despite losing the World Cup, the West Indies continued their dominance. From 1984 to 1990, the West Indies did not lose a single test series and dominated every game with their team. With all this, the West Indies team looked invincible. If we have to imagine the downfall of the team that was once the number one team in the world, it would be like this. The players who took that team to great heights retired. In the early 90s, the retirement of big players in the West Indies team had started. Players began retiring, such as Sir Vivian Richards, Gordon Greenidge, and Malcolm Marshall. Although many big players were still part of the West Indies team, it had become quite difficult to defeat every team in every match like before. The West Indies were expected to perform big from their big players to win matches. If they did, fine. Otherwise, the West Indies were trampled. This happened in the 1995 Australia series, where the West Indies lost 3-2 in Australia, and after that, they could never rise in Test cricket. Fast forward to 2000, the famous duo of the West Indies and impactful world cricketers, Courtney Walsh and Curtly Ambrose, had retired, and there were no big match winners left for the West Indies. However, there were still some good players left. Where 20 to 25 years ago all the players were in their prime form, now only a few players were left. Perhaps that is why the West Indies, under Brian Lara's captaincy, managed to win their third ICC trophy only in 2004. The West Indies won the 2004 Champions Trophy by defeating England in the final. The 2004 Champions Trophy was seen as the sunrise of the West Indies, indicating that this team would dominate the world like before. But then the second villain in the downfall story entered, the West Indies Cricket Board. Just imagine if there are differences between the cricket board and their players. What could be more terrible for a nation and its players? The following year, In 2005, a dispute arose between the West Indies Players Association and the West Indies Cricket Board over sponsorship and promotional rights, which was resolved much later. Due to this, Brian Lara was removed from the South Africa tour. Not only Brian Lara, but many other players were also stopped from playing for the team. Without their presence, the team's condition deteriorated. At that time, Shivnarine Chanderpaul led the team. This issue was resolved in October 2005, and for the upcoming Australia tour, the West Indies got their fully strengthened squad ready. But the series of disputes did not end there. It seemed like arguments were written in the fate of the West Indies Cricket Board and players. Then, in 2009, due to the issue of getting less money from the board and problems with contracts, the major players of the West Indies refused to play in the Bangladesh Tour and Champions Trophy, causing significant damage to the West Indies again. This animosity did not stop there. Instead, in 2012, it happened again. Ramnaresh Sarwan, who played his last international match in June 2011, won his case against the West Indies Cricket Board. What happened was that the West Indies Cricket Board dropped him on the basis of fitness, even though he was fit and wanted to play. But the board made some comments that led to a case against them, which they lost. As compensation, Ramnaresh Sarwan was given $161,000 by the West Indies Cricket Board. But the limit was reached when, in 2014, these arguments reached an extreme level. In 2014, we saw another dispute between the West Indies Players Association and the West Indies Cricket Board, mainly over contracts. The salary given to the players by the Cricket Board was not acceptable to the Players Association. Due to this, the West Indies Tour of India was cancelled by the West Indies Cricket Board in the middle of the season. This was very shocking because now the West Indies Cricket Board was taking strict actions that were not acceptable to the players. This controversy not only harmed the players and the team but also damaged the relations with the BCCI. Cancelling the tour caused a significant financial loss to the BCCI, which was not right. The tour consisted of 5 ODIs and 1 T20I, which was called off after the 4th ODI. Because of this, both teams' players were very disappointed. This drama escalated to the extent that players were cancelling their contracts due to low pay and had sworn not to represent the team. Therefore, today you see almost all West Indies star players playing in the IPL or other franchise leagues, but you will hardly find good players in their Test or ODI teams. This marked the beginning of the downfall of the West Indies cricket team. Then, in 2015, there was an internal strike, causing players to make themselves unavailable for the Test team. By this point, things had worsened significantly, and the path to recovery was almost impossible. The situation had escalated from players to administration and selectors, and since then, players have focused on franchises, almost forgetting their national team. The West Indies team, which once had legends, could not qualify for the 2017 Champions Trophy, the 2022 T20 World Cup, and the 2023 ODI World Cup. The entire legacy built by the great players had completely vanished. By 2023, everything had fallen, from rankings to overall value. Now, players were more focused on the T20 format for franchises, which is why they managed to win the T20 World Cup in 2012 and 2016. The natural talent of West Indies players and their style of play suit T20 cricket well. The speed at which they score runs and the kind of innings they play increase their value in T20 cricket. One thing everyone agrees on is that almost all West Indies players are all-rounders who can both bat and bowl, which further increases their value. This is why West Indies players are highly paid in the IPL, the Caribbean Premier League. West Indies' own T20 league has also significantly impacted this. While players are earning money by playing in franchises, the West Indies Test side is still struggling. They were also seen struggling during this period. They suffered heavy defeats in Test series against India, Pakistan, and England. In one-day cricket, West Indies had quite mixed results, which means they were average. However, they also faced many defeats during this time. Out of all 3 formats, West Indies seemed to be the most successful in T20 as they won the T20 World Cup in 2012 and 2016, becoming the most successful T20I team. But because they were lagging in the other formats, the West Indies team couldn't even qualify for ICC tournaments. Since then, the downfall of the West Indies team has continued. No one had imagined such a downfall for a team that was once the most dangerous and feared by other teams. Despite all this, some still hope that the dominating era of West Indies will return. But from the current situation, it is hard to predict when that day will come. However, a T20 World Cup is going to be held in June, which West Indies and the US are going to co-host. So, do you think West Indies will be able to win the T20 World Cup again or not? Do comment with your opinion. If you want to know about the journey of Virat Kohli, click the link in the description. Thanks for watching.